Okay, good morning, everyone. It's great to see you. If you're able to turn on your camera and you don't have it on, please turn it on for us. This morning we have Professor Jennifer Graham. She's the Associate Professor at the Frost School, the flute teacher. And before being at Frost, she was on the faculty at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, where she was also a Teacher of the Year in 2017. And the New York Times has hailed her as adept, smooth flute soloist. So thank you so much, Jennifer, for being with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to talking with you all today and maybe asking some questions. Yes, if it's possible, I'd love to see you, but if that's not an option, that's okay. Maybe I can just get a poll of the room. I guess we can use the chat function, but I'm curious what instruments everyone plays. You could yell it out. Violin. Great.
I play violin.
Yeah, excellent. You got a lot of violins, couple flutes, piano, saxophone, guitar. Excellent. Phonium, cello. Great. Awesome. Awesome. And great. And I'm also curious, I guess, how many of you all are in high school or maybe or close to, maybe how many of you are rising seniors? Do we have any rising seniors in this group? Nope. Okay. Yep, we have one. Okay. A few. Cool. Perfect. Good, good, good. Excellent. Well, I wanted to begin a little bit. Basically, I wanted to just kind of talk about various people's career paths. I guess I could mostly talk about my career path, and then just seeing if we can have a conversation about, what music means to all of you and where all of our places are in the field of music and what we can do in the field of music. So it probably makes sense for me to kind of introduce myself to you a little bit more and share my story with all of you. So um, I grew up in California, and I identify as a biracial Black woman flutist, and that's really important to me because growing up, I never really saw anyone that looked like me in music until I was a professional. So for me, I wanted to kind of show and let you all know that this is a very important aspect of my sort of self-identification as a musician, but also just moving forward as an educator as well. So, so I grew up in California, and I went to college, and I'll kind of give a bigger backstory later. But I went to college in California, and then I went to grad school um, at Yale, and then moved to New York City. And I was a freelancer in New York City for about 7 years before getting my first teaching job at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. And I was there for 12 years before coming to Miami. And so I've only been in Miami 1 year, but that's basically my career trajectory. And as a flutist, I've played a lot of chamber music, solo music, and I do a lot of teaching. And right now I'm teaching at an El Sistema program that's based out of Los Angeles called YOLA National. It's the Youth Orchestra of Los Angeles National Festival. And I've been doing that for several summers. So sometimes I feel like when I was growing up, since I mentioned I never saw anyone that looked like me growing up, I never really saw myself as a professional musician. And sometimes I think it's interesting just to hear everyone's stories about how they got to where they are. And so I thought I might start with sharing my story a little bit. So um, I started taking lessons, or I started playing the flute when I was 8 years old, and it was in school, and it was part of my school, band class. And in fact, in my third grade class, every single girl took flute lessons. It just was like a thing we all did. We just did it as like a social thing. And by the end of the third grade, I was the only one still playing flute. And I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. I happened to be like kind of good at it, but when I'm that young, I don't really know. And so I kind of kept going on in playing music, I took lessons. I never thought it was something that I would do for a living, again, because I never saw anyone else do it. I didn't see concerts, and when I did see concerts, I really only saw white musicians playing classical music. I didn't see anyone that looked like me. And for my family unit, it was not something that was a priority for my family. My parents urged me to become successful. And so for them, that meant making a lot of money, which means not going into music. And so I was really pressured into doing something that had nothing to do with music. So again, music was something I enjoyed, but it wasn't anything that I ever saw myself doing. Again, because it was something that I never thought I could do. It felt like it was a field where it just wasn't for someone like me. And that is something I want to bring home to you guys, because that definitely is not the case. But growing up for me, I just never thought it would be anything that someone like me would do. But I enjoyed playing. So I went off to college, and I was a math major, and I was pre-med because, again, my parents pressured me to do something where I was successful. So I started my pre-med classes. I began studying and trying to sort of prove my parents that I was going to be successful. And all the while, I just wanted to play music. I was playing music for fun. I wasn't playing it for any kind of long-term professional goals. I was playing it for fun only, but that I always kept coming back to music. So, all right, I was a math major. I don't know why I was a math major, but I guess I liked it in high school, so I picked math. I started, and I was like, this is not exactly what I was expecting. So I played around, and I ended up changing my major to psychology, but I was still pre-med because, again, it was still something that I felt like I needed to prove to my family that I was going to be doing something practical. I think it's a little bit of a cultural thing too for my family. It's like, okay, you have to do something that makes sense and is going to be guaranteed. And that was really my thought process all the way through. Then, about my second year in college, I was in a youth orchestra um, that was made up of different college and high school students from California. I grew up in Northern California, so I met people from San Francisco and all over. And these students were studying music, specifically music. And I realized that I had more in common with the musicians in the youth orchestra than I did with anyone in my classes for pre-med. And I kind of felt that that was like a little bit of a sign where I felt like I was not quite fitting in the academic world I was in, but I was much more comfortable fitting in with the other musicians I was with. And I kept thinking to myself, okay, well, if this is something I really want to do, maybe I should just try it. I don't know. And so I basically gave myself a plan B. I said, okay, I know there is this parental pressure to do something that's going to be guaranteed money or guaranteed success. So I can always look back and go back to school and get my doctor, get my medical degree, or actually go into what I was thinking at the time, go in to get a PhD in psychology and like, become like a regular person, right? But maybe for a couple years, I can really try this avenue out and see what happens. So I started focusing my practicing. So up until my college years, I had been playing flute for fun and I practiced, but it was never something where I was practicing so diligently to get into a scholarship program, to a summer festival. I had never practiced to that extent. It was never serious for me. It was always, this is fun and I'm playing pieces and I enjoy it and I practice, but the discipline, I didn't have the discipline. So I had to really sort of refocus my practicing. And it was really challenging at the time, but I knew that I had to do it if I were to even have a shot at going this route. So I ended up shifting my focus. My motivation was really strong because I realized that this was like the one thing I really enjoyed doing. This was the one thing I felt like I had for. The other stuff was something that I should do. This is what I wanted to do. And so by sort of shifting my practicing, I realized that, okay, this is something that I could possibly do. So it was a really tough last 2 years of college. I ended up, changing my major a third time. And so I was a double major in music and psychology. Um, and at my undergraduate school, I went to Stanford University, which is not a music school. It's not known as a music school. It's a very good academic school, but it's not known as a music school. And I didn't even have to take lessons to get my music degree, actually. So, but I took lessons anyway, and I, practiced as much as I could. I really shifted my practicing, as I said. I even took a year off after I graduated to prepare for graduate school. And so, luckily, I was able to get into a graduate program. And I went to the Yale School of Music at Yale University. I applied to 7 different programs and I only got into one. And that was the one program I got into. So I still kept that as a sign. I said, okay, well, I got into one school. I'm just going to like take out a bunch of loans. Sadly, I did, and just see what happens. And so I took that leap, and I know that I'm very thankful for that opportunity that the teacher at Yale, Ransom Wilson, gave me, um, because that kind of set things off into a different trajectory for me. So I entered graduate school. So kind of just as a recap, I was good at flute, but I was never serious about flute. I had gone to my undergrad thinking I was going to be a doctor. I left undergrad thinking maybe I could try to do music. I entered grad school like completely wide-eyed and like a foreigner. I felt like I was a foreigner at this school. And I think, so I was at Yale for 3 years. And by my third year, I think there were 2 other Black students who were studying music at the program. So it was very, very isolating for me. But in a way, I used that as practice time. So I was isolated, I was completely by myself, but I used that time to practice. So I entered Yale with a lot to catch up on. Um, it's very easy and safe to say that I probably was the weakest musician at the school at the time. And I was not placed into any of the orchestras when I got there. So I had a lot of makeup practice to do. So I was taking lessons and going to classes, but I was not participating in the ensembles because I wasn't ready yet. And so what I also had to do is, since I had to take out loans, I had work study. So work study is where you actually work and you get like a minimum wage, which helps with your living expenses. So, I had to pay my way through grad school. So I had a job. And so my job happened to be stage manager. So I was the stage manager at the School of Music. So I would, open the doors and set up the chairs and stands for all of the performances. This would be student performances, faculty performances, um, all kinds of performances. And I did it a lot because I needed to make money to live. And I also wasn't in the ensembles and I had some time. And over the course of that first year, I would work concerts where students would be playing their recitals. And I think at least 3 different times, students that I had been in class with, so we were in the same music history class, these students did not know that I was actually a musician. They thought that I was just a stage manager. They thought, based on how I look, that I was not actually a music student, that I just was a worker at the school. And so I had to set them straight. I said, no, I'm actually a music student. I'm a flutist. And so, those kinds of things always happened, happened to me the entire time I was at Yale. But by the third year, I felt like I was improving. My confidence kind of improved, and I was able to play in the ensembles. And then by the end, I actually won some competitions. And so I ended up playing and being featured. But for the first 2 years of my 3 years there, things were very, very difficult, like anyone who's struggling. And I mention that just because while some people sort of experience this kind of racism in other ways, like this is how it kind of can show in classical music, where people do not see people like us so often on stage. And so they just have an automatic reaction that they couldn't possibly be a musician. So I set them straight and I finally proved to them that I actually deserved to be at the school. And so those kinds of things I ran into a lot and still run into as a musician of color. And just to kind of, encourage you who might be feeling the same, um, that I think perseverance is really important, and also that you're not alone, and also that my my experiences have taught me that I need to do as much as I can to be a mentor to other musicians so that we are a community together. So that's a little bit why I wanted to just share my story um, of kind of growing up and becoming a professional musician. So people may think that it kind of came because we are, we practice, we get in the conservatory, and then we get these jobs. But it definitely did not happen for me. And it doesn't happen for a lot of us, but it definitely didn't happen for me. So, so I graduated Yale and I moved to New York City because I was like, okay, I'm going to try to make it in New York City. And New York City is a really different atmosphere than my graduate school, my graduate program. I definitely was not the only Black face people saw in the streets of New York City. So it was a very integrated, very mixed, very diverse city. But still, the classical music world was not. And being in New York, things were very difficult when you start out. And a lot of people have to take regular jobs. And my regular job was working at Starbucks. So I worked at Starbucks for 3 years while I was living in New York. And I don't know if any of you have been to New York, but there is, I happened to work at a Starbucks that was on the Upper West Side, which is actually across the street from a music conservatory. The Mannes School of Music was across the street from where I was working at Starbucks. And so I would see lots of professional musicians that I had admired come into the store. And so I had my own kinds of experiences working at the store. with musicians. Um, so in a very diverse city like New York, um, you get a lot of people in the service industry are very diverse, and they're a lot of times Black and brown workers. So at my store, there were very few white people who worked at Starbucks. So everyone that worked was either Latino or Black, just like me. And the people who came into the Starbucks were mostly white. And so that was also an interesting dynamic to experience. I had some very, really, really great interactions with people. In New York City, you sometimes run into random celebrities. And so um, I remember kind of serving coffees to some actors that I had seen on TV. That was really exciting. But then I also would see, um, I would run into some people that I actually had looked up to, classical musicians that I had looked up to. Of course, they didn't know who I was because I was still like an emerging professional, and because I looked the part. I was a worker at Starbucks, and so they didn't see me as someone that was like possibly a musician or possibly someone that would know them. And I had several interactions with people that I had looked up to who treated me and my colleagues very poorly. And that was really another eye-opening experience for me. It's like to see people's true colors when they are behaving rudely because someone isn't making their latte fast enough, or it's not hot enough, or it doesn't have enough foam, or things like that. That was something that I noticed in people that I had looked up to. So just another little aside story that, people we have to kind of deal with and experience, right? So um, I kind of worked through Starbucks. I tried my best to break into the freelance world. I was able to play a lot of really amazing concerts. I joined a woodwind quintet, and that woodwind quintet, we went on tour all over the country. I was very fortunate to be able to play really amazing concerts and all over in different cities, big cities, but a lot of smaller cities. And so I got a chance to sort of see a lot of the country, which was really exciting for me. I was really pleased with how things were going. I ended up getting a teaching job in Pennsylvania, which is like a 3 hour drive. So I would drive 3 hours to go teach and then come back to New York and play a couple concerts. And, I had a really, really exciting life, right, in New York. But New York is a really expensive city, and it's really difficult to make a living if you're really there. And so I ended up getting a teaching job at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, at UNLV. And that was a really fantastic experience for me. I loved the job and I loved my students. And Las Vegas, I don't know if any of you've been to Las Vegas or any been out west. It is very, very diverse. And so my studio of flute students were really, really diverse and really a reflection of the city of Las Vegas, and also of my own heritage. So I felt very, very comfortable sort of mentoring my students. The students felt comfortable around each other. And I think that's really, really important to kind of foster that idea that of belonging. I felt like I didn't necessarily have people that looked like me growing up, but I'm really happy that I had a studio of people where they had their own role models as well as maybe their teacher, but their own classmates that actually looked like them, that felt like they were actually really a part of a community. I think that was really, really great. And then last year I moved to Miami and I'm starting all over again. And so it is a whole new experience here. And it's a very, very diverse city, as you all know. And I'm excited to get a chance to see more of the city and actually go to different schools, and kind of reach out to um, different communities. But I've just started, and about 6 months into it, or maybe 8 months into it, the world shut down, so I couldn't really do anything. But I'm really happy to be here, talking with you all. So um, basically, I wanted to kind of share my path. I wanted to share how 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 important I think it is that we have mentors and role models that reflect who we are and reflect maybe our upbringing, which will help give us the confidence to move forward. So all I can say is, you know, if any of you are somewhat serious about going into music, I would say don't don't limit yourself based on what you think you should do or not do. I would say pursue your dreams because that's something you really feel strongly for. If you have passion, then I think you need to go for it and seek out people that can help you. And there are more and more people that I know you can go out and you can seek out to get that help and get that mentorship. So um, those are some things I'd like to just kind of, just share with you. Um, I was thinking, so in the idea of finding your own path, sometimes it may mean becoming a professional musician, but sometimes it might mean, doing something that's not exactly perfect related. So I'm curious also to ask you guys what um, what kinds of careers in music do you guys know about? And what kinds of things would you be interested in? So possibly, if any of you are interested in pursuing music, if any of you are interested in pursuing music, what kinds of careers are you thinking? So yeah, you can put it in the chat. So scoring for film, what are some other? Music therapy, excellent. Education, excellent. Excellent. Therapy. Any others going into music technology? Cool. Any other performing? Any other people interested in performance? Freelance. Cool. Theater. Good. Good. Wonderful. Wonderful. So I was, one of the things I was thinking about is in my path, I hadn't had enough role models to encourage my my interests. And so I want to just stress for you, if this is something you want to do, and whether you're, if you're closer to college, then obviously the conversation changes a little bit than if you're in middle school, right? Middle school, you have more time to think if this is something you want to do or not. But if you're in high school and this is something you want to think about, I think finding that mentorship is really important, and and believing in yourself is also really, really important. Exposing yourself to as much content as possible. Now, and in a way, it's like even easier now because we're all online and we can actually seek out concerts more than we could before. But I would say seek out as much content as possible, as much as you can. Um, I was thinking, what other careers, what careers do you guys think that you can do that is related to music? So we said film scoring, music therapy, music education, technology. What other careers are there that have to do with music? Maybe it's not something you're specifically interested in, but what other careers are there? So if you really like performing, but maybe do not necessarily want to do it career, you can be interested in artist management is one. So I see music business, music tech, absolutely, music production, perfect. So artist management is actually working with musicians, right? Working with musicians and kind of working on building their careers and finding opportunities for them. So if you're like a people person and you enjoy interacting with people, artist management is a really interesting topic to go into. It's a really interesting career path. You get to work with presenters. A presenter is an organization that will hire musicians. So that person is the artist manager, is the liaison between the presenter and the artist. And that's a really interesting way to kind of to be involved in music, but actually and be surrounded by amazing performers, but not actually have to do the performing yourself. And music production is a really interesting thing too. Especially now, a lot of people are interested in doing a lot of the recordings, the multi-track layering recordings that people are doing. Those are really interesting. I think people are getting really good at it these days, and so music production is more and more in demand. And so that's a really, really important kind of tool for even if you're not doing it as a career, but having experience in music production is really important. Same thing like with recording engineer, same kind of thing. Those kinds of careers are really important as you find your path and as you sort of find your way. And having these other skill sets is really, really useful for performers. And I see a lot of people are interested in teaching, which is fantastic. Because again, we need to have role models for the next generation of students. I think that's also really, really important. So for those of you who are actually interested in music, possibly as a career, I just kind of want to encourage you as much as I can in terms of what possibilities there are for you. So I think in addition to the programs that you are doing right now, seek out as many other opportunities. Right now online, there are master classes everyone can sign up for, and a lot of them are free or very cheap. I think you can really take advantage of those masterclass opportunities. Also, just having meetings with people, finding different artists that you enjoy and finding them on their websites and contacting them is also a way that you can introduce yourself to people. I think people want to be mentors. I think people want to help. And so seeking that out, I think, is really, really good if you feel comfortable doing that. Something else that for those of you who are interested in maybe performing, I guess my talk is a little bit more geared on performing since I am a performer. So if you are interested in, if you really like to play your instrument and you're really interested in possibly pursuing it more, I think do not feel that this field is not for you. That's what I would like to just bring home, is that this may feel like it's an elitist field, like it's only for people with privilege. And as someone who didn't have that, and someone who's been one of the few that's kind of come through, I understand that it is. I understand that it has that people feel that way, but it is possible, absolutely. And so I don't know if any of you are aware of this conductor, Thomas Wilkins. Thomas Wilkins is a conductor. He actually lives in Florida, but he conducts the Hollywood Bowl Orchestra, as well as he's conducted the Boston Symphony. And I think he's the musical director of the Omaha Symphony. And so he recently gave an address where he kind of talked about, us as musicians of color, how we can believe in ourselves. And he had this 3-word phrase. He said, you know, believe, beware, and belong. And so believe is to believe in ourselves. And that is actually a lot harder than it seems. Um, we have been in a way conditioned to not believe in ourselves in many ways. And I had never believed in myself as a musician. And with parental pressures that, you know, you may or whoever people may have in their lives, to try to do something that's going to be, quote, successful, it makes it hard. So that voice kind of gets in your head. And so believing in yourself is probably the hardest, but the most important one to think about. So believe in yourself. And then the second one is beware. And beware really means beware of all of the lies that are surrounding you. And some of those lies are from yourself. Lies meaning that you can't do it, or lies meaning like classical music isn't for people like us, or lies that you can't do this, you're not good enough. So beware of the lies. To think about being like, you're only in control of what you can do. You can't control what other people think, and you can't control um, what other people how other people think of you or of your abilities. You can only control your own self. And so beware of all of the other stuff that's out there, right? Don't beware of it, and don't let that cloud what you're thinking in your judgment. So let's believe and beware. And the third one is belong, right? So belong is you have to feel like you belong in this place. And that's only after believing in yourself and beware of the chatter, beware of the lies out there. Belong, then we can get to the sense of belonging, right? I see beware means realistic thinking. I understand that. I do, because the beware kind of keeps us on our toes in a way, right? So beware of, you know, you don't want to let that kind of get you sucked in. That's the thing. Like, you need that. That's why it's part of this, right? So believe in yourself and beware or be wary of all of the other chatter out there. And you can use that to sort of galvanize you. You can use that to support you. You can use that to motivate you. Um, but beware of it. Don't let it get in your head. And it's very easy for that to happen. It's very easy for that to happen, because oftentimes we are maybe led to believe that we have gotten our place because we happen to not be white or whatever it is in certain cases. I've definitely felt that way myself. I felt that way, that I have not received opportunities because I'm not white, and I've also felt that I have received opportunities because I'm not white, not necessarily on my talent. I have felt both of those things. Not to say that it's good or bad. I've felt both of those things, and just being aware of that, is important. So, I think it's important for us, especially if some of us are going into music education, right? We are going to be the new mentors for the next generation of music students. Like, if we really believe that the 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 power of music, right? If we believe that the power of music is there, and if we have the opportunity to help others, then I think we also have a moral obligation to do that, and to make sure that no one else is left behind. So that's sort of like my call to you guys is, for our future music educators, if we have this love of music, that's so important, and that we have to kind of help propel this system forward. So I'm just seeing some things in the chat. Yes. Yeah. How did you know that you wanted to do, yeah, and so if anyone wants to ask more questions, feel free, and like I'd like for this to be a little bit more of a discussion as well. And maybe you can even ask them out loud. I don't know how this will work, but so how did you know that you wanted to do music as a career? So so as I was mentioning, so I at first didn't, and I felt like I so it was really when I was in this youth orchestra with a lot of other college students. So I didn't think I was going to go into music until after I was in college. Um, and it's a little harder to make that decision at this point now, but I know a lot of people who haven't. So you don't necessarily need to know right now that music is your life. You don't need to know. But I think you just need to have the tools to be able to make it work for you. So for me, yes. So when I was in college, I was I was in my math major phase, and I was in this youth orchestra, and everyone was always talking about music, and I just realized that that was like the one thing I enjoyed doing. I had realized that I would take study breaks to practice flute, and then those study breaks ended up being really long, and I ended up practicing a lot longer than studying for my classes. And and then there was an actual moment. So so I don't know if so however for all of the high school maybe seniors who have taken chemistry before, so part of the pre-med sequence in college, if you're going into med school, you have to take a class called organic chemistry. And that class is a class that is designed to weed out people who are not ready for the degree. It's called the weed out class. Everyone knows it. So I was in that class. I was prepared that this is like, and the reason why is that it's really, really hard. So the first year of chemistry is not so bad, but when you get to organic chemistry, all of a sudden it like, you know, it separates like the people from the people who are not ready. And I was in that class, and I thought to myself, do I really want to be spending all of this time studying for a subject that I did not like and pursuing a career that I could not visualize myself in, whereas I could just practice my flute and do that, and that's something I really, really, really love. And so that was really the moment where I decided to pursue my passion and not pursue something that I was just like practical for me. So that was like the moment. Um, and so then I stopped studying organic chemistry. I got a really bad grade, but I practiced the flute more, and I ended up not majoring in pre-med, so it didn't matter. So, so that's, that's that's my story for that. Were your parents hard on you when you decided to pursue music? Yes. So during this moment, I had wanted to transfer, and it was just my mom, and I was just living with my mom, and at the time, and I told her I wanted to transfer to a music conservatory, and she laughed at me because she was like, "There's no way you're leaving. There's no way you're transferring." And I said, well, but I won't be able to, study music performance as seriously here because, my undergrad was a great school, but it was not like a music school. And I felt like I needed to be around musicians. And she was like, no way. You just have to make do where you are. And so I did as best as I could and as much as I could, but definitely, I didn't have the support that I think other, then but I think it's pretty common for parents to be like, why do you want to do something like play music? Why can't you like make money, like be a lawyer or a doctor? I mean, that's not, I don't think that's uncommon for parents to want to ask of their children. I don't think it's uncommon, but I definitely had to pursue things on my own. And then when I went to graduate school, it was all self-funded, so I had to take out loans and work study, like I mentioned, in order to make that work. So that was part of the struggle for me was I had to do it myself. So um, yeah, how did I know choosing music was the right decision? You know, I didn't. I didn't know. So I made a deal with myself. So by the time I had changed my major to music, I kept psychology. So I majored in music and psychology. I was a double major. And in that, I decided I told myself, I said, okay, if I can get into a good graduate school for music where I can really like focus on music and not have to focus on anything else, and that it was, far away from my mom, I was like, okay, I'm going to do it. And so I I said, okay, if I can get into a grad program, I will try it. If not, then I will continue and go to graduate school in psychology and get a PhD. So it's I had a plan B. I was happy with my plan B. Like I loved psychology. I would say a lot of people, like non-musicians, I think a lot of people like their jobs. I don't know if a lot of people are like passionate about their jobs. So for me, going into psychology is something like I could do that. I would be happy doing that. It wouldn't be what I loved, but it was something I could see myself doing it and it could be okay. Um, but with something like that, I knew that I had time to make that decision. I didn't need to do it right away. But I did know for music that since I hadn't really been serious until college, I knew I needed to kind of really push myself. And so that is like, okay, I need to try music first. Like I didn't want to wait too long. You don't have to do it right away, but you shouldn't wait too long to pursue music seriously. So that's how yeah, that's how I feel like we are um for me that worked because I knew I had something that I could, quote, fall back on, and I knew I had something where I could see myself even though it wasn't my first passion. And that allowed me to make the plunge and make the leap in going into music and to put all of these cards out there. I put all of this stuff out there. Like, okay, I'm going into music now. And, you know, and like, oh my God, what happens if it doesn't work out? I knew that, like, okay, well, I did really like this other subject and I could do that. So that kind of helped me um, make that make the leap for into music. Yes, if you want to unmute yourself, please, and ask a question. Who's that?
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So,
Yeah, hi.
first of all, thank you so much for sharing your story. I can definitely like relate to your story because like I kind of grew up the same way,
Mm-hmm.
and I've actually struggled so much with like being motivated, like staying motivated, because like sometimes I kind of think that I want to do like maybe music therapy or like flute performance, and like some of them like, oh my God, I'm not good enough for this. Like even though I know like that's not true, and
Mm-hmm.
like
Mm-hmm.
what keeps you motivated? Like who inspires you?
So, you know, it's hard now. So, I mean, pretend we're not in coronavirus land. Okay, so let's pretend we're not in coronavirus land. So, um, I I remember I remember just always I had to always surround myself with stronger players. So for some people it makes it hard. It's hard because it's sort of a confidence, thing where it's like, okay, everyone's better than me. But for me, it helped me kind of, gain perspective. Like in a way is like when I was saying like believe, beware, belong, like the beware of like the lies telling you you can't do this. But for me, I almost wanted to have more um more people that were better than me in my circle so that I could like have something to strive for. And so this really happened when I was at Yale. So I went to Yale. I was like literally the worst flutist there, like hands down. And it was like really obvious because I didn't even get into the orchestra. And people thought I was a stage manager, didn't even know I was a musician. So I was there, the worst flutist there. And because I knew it, and my classmates all knew it too, they kind of dismissed me. Um, but I didn't think of that as being a deterrent, honestly, because I felt like um, it provided me with like the room to grow. Like they didn't even like, so my classmates were very nice to me. It wasn't like, oh, you suck. It was more like, oh, you're over here and like we're over here. So I felt definitely isolated from them. They didn't put me down, but I felt isolated and I wasn't involved. I wasn't included. Um, but what that did is it allowed me to really focus on myself, and it allowed me to work really hard to get to the point where I actually was a part of them. So for me, being surrounded by people stronger than me was really a good motivator. So that really helped me when I was in school. But now it's really hard. I'm actually hard. It's hard for me to be motivated myself right now. I have not played the flute very much. Like I have not played the flute very much since March, to be honest. Uh, but now is a really tricky time. But what I have been motivated by is a lot of people are really using this sort of virtual opportunities and really galvanizing their own careers by it. And that's really fascinating to see and really exciting to watch. I had, to be honest, I had gotten a certain point motivated. Um, and then, all of the the George Floyd killing and the Breonna Taylor, all of that happened, and then I just completely went back down again. And so I'm still trying to come up from that. So it's been a very rough, for me, just this whole time is pretty rough. But I think in general, trying to surround yourself with people stronger than you, but also people who are positive. That's another thing, is that it's really hard when there's so much negativity, and the music world has a lot of it, because we have to be very um, we have to be very very honest, right? You're in competitions, and then if you don't win a competition, that's rejection, right? And so everything we do is about rejection. So like I had mentioned the things that I had gotten, but I didn't mention the things that I got rejected from. But I got rejected from a lot. Like, um, I only got into one grad school, but that means I got 6 grad schools said no to me. And God knows how many jobs I applied for said no to me. 2 said yes. Those are the 2 jobs I've had. But I applied for many, many more of those jobs, But the thing is, we don't know about those positions. We don't know about our failures. We only know about the successes. And so, um, you know, that's something, just, it's hard to kind of, face around it. But I would say surround yourself with other people who are positive and who believe in you and believe in themselves. Um, I've had to kind of stray away from a lot of negative people in my life, because it kind of destroys your own, even though they're negative about themselves, just hearing them be negative about themselves kind of destroys your own kind of sense of self-worth too. So I would say, as much as you can, surround yourself with positive people, and then use the fact that, if you can be the weakest musician in the room, that could be a real galvanizing idea, and you can really take it from there. Any other questions? Yeah, seeing people sing better than me actually helps me, because it's right. It's like, if they can do it, you can too. Exactly. And that's exactly how I felt at Yale. I looked up to my colleagues. They were the same age, but I looked up to them, and, I saw how they practiced, and I saw how they worked. And unlike them, I I went to the practice room at 7:30 a.m. when the practice building opened, and I left at midnight when the practice building closed. They didn't practice as long as I did, but I did, because I knew I had to catch up. I knew I had to practice like 3 times as much as everyone else. And I made sure I was the first one there and I was the last one to leave the building. And that's partially how I got to where I am. So, yes, please unmute.
I want to say thank you, like, for answering that question, because it means a lot to me, because, like, especially hearing from your story, and, like, I could really, really relate to it. It inspires me, like, you inspire me so much. And, like,
Thank you.
you're, like, a big reason why I'm, like, even looking at, like, music therapy and, like, flute performance. And, like,
Oh, fantastic.
I know you said that you're, like, in really low times right now, and, like, of course, like, these are, like, the worst times, like, especially for, like, minorities. And, like, I just want to, like, tell you, you got this. Like, of course you got this. You're really good at everything that you do, and you can do it. And I hope that you feel better soon.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's so sweet of you. Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions or any comments? Anything? Any questions about what we talked about sort of just, yeah, please. Anybody would like to say anything? Well, if anyone has a question later, about anything we talked about today, you can find me. So I'm on the Frost School website. How do I feel when I perform? See, that's the thing is, it's I like FaceTime with my mom. That's cute. Yay. Um, um, how do I feel when I perform? That's the problem, is that because I'm not performing right now, I'm not feeling so great. But I really love performing. And if there's an opportunity to perform again, I know things will be, I'm sure I'll feel better. Everyone will feel better, like when we're able to do our craft again. But sometimes when I'm performing, I'm really, really nervous. But I have to say, when I look back on it, the times I was really, really, really nervous were the times that I was perhaps not as prepared as I could have been. And I think about that every single time where I was really, really, really nervous. And it could have been like it was a really important opportunity, like some big shot was in the audience or something. It was like some big opportunity. There were times where there was like a big shot in the audience and I was feeling really comfortable and excited. And then there were times where I was really, really, really nervous. And every one of those times I had looked back on it afterwards and I was like, every time where I was really, really nervous was when I was maybe not 100% confident in my piece. So that's a little something that I've kind of learned over the years. But when I am really, really comfortable and really prepared, it's a thrilling experience to be able just to share with the audience and to connect with the audience. And unfortunately, none of that's happening. It's really hard to connect these days. And so I'm really looking forward to, when we can do that again. So yes, Silvana wants to ask a question.
So I had a question. I wanted to know what was like one of the happiest and more successful moments in your career, something that you're really, really proud of.
So I had a student in Las Vegas. She finished her doctorate degree, and she had wanted to create. She's actually from Panama, and she wanted to create a festival a flute festival in Panama. And like one of the happiest moments that I actually had was seeing her create this international festival where she invited artists from Europe, the United States, from other Latin American countries to Panama, and she created this week-long festival. And I was one of the artists that visited, and I saw her put this together with a lot of students. She recruited students from Panama, from Costa Rica, from Honduras. She like created this whole festival all herself. And I was just so proud of her, and that was really like one of the happiest moments I've had as in my whole career, is seeing her produce this really amazing event. It was really, really meaningful for me to watch and for her to experience. So
Thank you.
yeah. Was it hard to get into Yale? Yeah, it was. But I mean, I have to admit, I believe, and I've had conversations with my teacher at Yale about this, is that he knew I wasn't technically ready to get into Yale. Like he knew I didn't have the foundations to get into Yale because again, I had not really been a serious music student, but I think he saw something in me, and he, you know, he took a risk in accepting me. And I know that, and we've talked about it since. And so thankfully the risk paid off, and I'm very thankful for him for accepting me. And I'm also very thankful, and I think about that also when I'm recruiting my own students, is like, you know, sometimes people may not have had the access or the resources, but they see something in the students. And I think that's really, really powerful for teachers to say, okay, well, maybe this person didn't have lessons since they were like, since maybe this person didn't have private lessons since they were like 5 years old, but they have something. They have like an innate musical talent that I can work with. And so I'm very thankful that he took a chance on me. And it's something that I think about a lot when I recruit for my own students. So, any other questions? No? Okay, well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Professor Lesnia.
Thank you so much for being here.
You.
Thank you, thank you. And yeah, contact me if you have any other questions. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.